Welcome to the NonProfit Voice, a podcast series brought to you by NonProfit Pro, the go-to resource for nonprofit management and strategy. In each episode, we're going to sit down with leaders of nonprofit organizations, the people responsible for paving the way for our sector, along with key technology strategy partners who are transforming our industry. Here at the NonProfit Voice, we'll have refreshing conversations in which we will all learn more about the convergence of nonprofit and technology. Be sure to follow us on social media and visit our website to find more episodes of the NonProfit Voice. And you can download all of the NonProfit Voice episodes on iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify. We will have all the links down below. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the NonProfit Voice. I'm Nuti, Editor-in-Chief of NonProfit Pro, and I will be your host for today's podcast, like I am every episode. So welcome back. I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy to be here. I hope everyone is having an awesome February. So we're in the last week of February, and I just realized the other day that it's leap year, so happy leap year. So in today's episode, we're talking about something very interesting, and I have some remarkable guests on the line with me. I'm super excited to introduce to you to Sarah Roby, Manager of Online Marketing at World Wildlife Fund, and Bradley Martin, Senior Director of Customer Acquisition at Kindful. Hey guys, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. So how are you both doing?
Doing well, thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Same for me. Doing great.
Awesome. So before we get started, I want to get to know you guys a little more. So Sarah, let's start with you. Can you share your background and tell us more about yourself and what you do at World Wildlife Fund and what you have done in the past?
Yeah, so I have been at World Wildlife Fund for my entire nonprofit career, which has been 11 years, surprisingly. In that time, we've had a very small group at the onset. So I was able to touch a lot of things such as social media, advocacy, fundraising, peer-to-peer fundraising, and so now focused a lot on stewardship and retention of donors and the sort of donor user experience. And throughout that tenure, I've been really focused on email marketing. And just in 2016, a few years ago, started noticing declines in some of our open rates, especially with Gmail. And so I stumbled across this world of email deliverability and became sort of fascinated with the science of it and the challenge of it. It's certainly a lot more nuanced than anyone can really understand at the onset. So excited to be here to share some information and tips on how to get emails in the inbox.
Awesome. And Bradley, how about you?
Yeah, so I have been with Kindful for about 2.5 years, leading our sales and marketing. So if you're not familiar with Kindful, we are a donor management system specifically for nonprofit organizations, sometimes also referred to as a nonprofit CRM. And so, really, outside of volunteering at some organizations and following a few organizations and things like that, and being a donor, I didn't have a whole lot of experience with nonprofits until about 2.5 years ago. My background and why I'm so excited about this topic is that I spent about 5 years before that working for a company called Emma, which is an email marketing service provider for many organizations of all types, but about 30% of their customer base was nonprofits. And so this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and I really enjoy talking about it because I think it's very fascinating, everything that's changing around it, and all the tactics that you can use to stay relevant.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about this as well. And, as technology evolves and becomes more sophisticated in its craft, I think that we need to keep up too. And email deliverability especially is something that we definitely should be taking very seriously. So today, the three of us are going to dive a lot deeper into it. So to get us started, let's talk about where we are as a sector with email marketing and how we can improve. And Bradley, I love you for you to kick off this question because of your background?
Sure. And so I think, what I've heard year after year after year is that email is dead, right? And I think as we were analyzing some of the data from Giving Tuesday and then just the giving on the last 2 days of the year, we can clearly see for nonprofit organizations that is not the case. On the donations given to organizations that use Kindful, almost over 25% of those donations came from an email click to the donation page. And so email is definitely still a really huge part of I believe, of an organization's marketing toolkit. Now, I will say, I think this might make a few people cringe. On the flip side, my personal inbox has 46,000 unread emails in it because you're getting emails. I get 7 emails a day from Target, and from, I'm getting so many emails, and I'm bombarded with emails. I think we've become a little ad blind to emails, and we're scanning through them quickly just to try to keep our inboxes manageable, or you just give up like I have. And so I think, email is a great tool, and it's still highly effective. But I think one of the biggest ways we can think about improving is really focusing on relevance. When we're thinking about how we're using email as a tool, it's not just sufficient any longer just to send an e-blast once a month to your whole database. So those are kind of my initial thoughts on kind of where we are, and and the fact that it's still a very useful tool, but we got to pay a little bit more attention to it, put a little bit more work in it, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the email front that, we are hearing that it's dead, but it certainly is not, I don't think. And especially in our sector, I think it's very important for nonprofits to understand how to use it and use it effectively. Sarah, what are your thoughts on that?
First of all, my inbox, unread messages is at 0, I'd like to say. I think from the opposite standpoint, I'm just naturally interested in email, so I'm generally peeking at most of them. But agreeing with sort of the thoughts here that, email is not dead, but the way that we used to email is dead. As Bradley was mentioning, we can no longer just sort of send one blast, quote unquote, to everybody and just hope it'll be interesting to some people. The mailbox providers of the world, the Yahoos and Gmails, are watching what we're doing. They're watching how our subscribers are interacting with our emails, and they're using those decisions to decide how to deliver your email. So I think there's a few different sort of key changes that are happening right now that's really affecting deliverability. And if people haven't seen issues in the past, I think they're going to start seeing issues in the future. There's sort of first and foremost privacy concerns. We're seeing, new privacy acts coming across, whether it's EU, California now, it'll roll out across the U.S. And it's bringing privacy and issues back into the control of, your subscriber, of your supporter. So sort of gone are the times where you can buy your email lists or be vague about whether or not somebody's signing up for an email. We have to be very permissions-based. We have to be very clear that somebody's signing up for email, because we don't want that person to then mark us as spam or ignore us or delete us. That's going to look bad upon spam filters. Engagement, we really want. Again, spam filters are now looking at engagement. They're looking at the opens and clicks from your supporters. So you really want to try to find ways to get those opens and clicks and stop sending to people who are not opening and clicking your email. So finding ways, again, to make it relevant for people, interesting content that you promise to deliver. And finally, I think something that's being talked about more and more is email accessibility. There's millions of people in the U.S. and even more around the world that have some sort of visual impairments that prevents them from, being able to easily distinguish like colors in an email, see images very clearly, and people are using more and more sort of virtual readers to get at the content of your emails. So we need to be thinking about, not only are the emails getting into people's inboxes, but are our supporters able to read them, and are we making our communications accessible for them?
Yeah, that's a great point, Sarah. And, I would love for you to take on this next question of, email is getting more difficult to get into people's inboxes and to be read, So what are some creative strategies to use in email marketing to really catch the reader's attention and get them to open up the email?
Right. So, as we know, in terms of email engagement, the first step is getting someone to open an email, especially if it is lucky enough to arrive in the inbox. And there's really three ways to play here, right, before someone even makes the decision to open your email. There's the subject line, the sender name. So oftentimes people just use the name of the organization or make a connection to an individual staff person's name in the organization, which could give it a more personal feel, to feel like it's coming from an individual rather than the organization. And finally, the preview text. So you'll know that there's certain lines of copy that can show up right underneath the subject line that gives readers sort of that tease about what's inside. So these three elements, I think, can play really well with each other in terms of sparking somebody's interest. Again, are you fostering those relationships that someone knows your sender name and knows that they can count on you to deliver good emails? Are there things that you can tease in the subject line, whether it's a list, a how-to, an intriguing question? Sometimes you can use emojis in a really kind of clever way, but not a spammy way. Everything in moderation, right? So trying out new tactics, but then making sure to keep it fresh so it doesn't seem stale or fall in the inbox along with everyone else's. So certainly trying new things, A/B testing things to find ways to increase your opens and open rate.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to piggyback on one of the things that Sarah already said, but I think if you take just a moment to look at your own inbox and you just kind of do an analysis of it and think about your behavior a little bit, I think that's a great place to start. And one of the things that you may notice, or one of the things I've noticed recently is, I often now dismiss most HTML emails. And so what I mean by an HTML email is when I open it, the first thing I see is a header image. I see a picture at the top of the email. And if I'm in a really busy day or something like that, I'm just going to automatically hit delete because I know that's a marketing email. And so Sarah mentioned, sending the email from a person. And I would take that one step further and say, even making when you open the email look like that it's actually from a human being. And so I think as a natural tendency, we tend to dismiss marketing emails as almost like how you go through your inbox at your house, your mailbox, that it's junk mail, right? It's stuff. And I don't want to just say that all HTML emails are junk mail, but you just kind of go through it as, oh, that's just the advertising piece, I can throw it to the side. Whereas if you get an email that it's from a person, the subject line is clear and concise, and then the actual body copy and when you open the email, it looks like it was written by a person. Those emails, I believe, can be incredibly effective. We actually did a study with Next After where they saw that emails that are sent that way versus HTML emails, when they did a direct A/B split test, saw a 28% increase in donations when it was an ask.
Wow.
And then I would add one other thing to that as well, is that, don't just send asks, right? I think like a lot of nonprofits, organizations get into kind of this series that all their emails have an ask in it. I think one of the biggest things you can do is send valuable content to your audience. If you know someone, if you have a specific cause and someone's given to your cause, what's going on in legislation? Is there a blog article? Is there news about what that surrounds the work that you do? It doesn't always have to be original content. It can be curated content that your supporters may find interesting and valuable, sending some of those so that not every email comes off as a request or an ask for a donation, I think can actually provide a lot of value to your audience. And so many organizations just kind of get stuck in continual asks.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I really like what you said, Bradley, about the emails with HTML, because I do the same thing. When I'm getting an email, I'd rather it come from a person rather than, that I know that's coming from like an automated machine.
And I will add real quick, there are ways to do that with marketing tools. So like if you use MailChimp or you use HubSpot or you use Emma or Constant Contact or any of those tools, you can still make an email, look like you just remove all the pictures, make it look like plain text, and it's something worth trying, and it'd be surprising what the results you might find.
Yeah, and especially in our sector, like when it comes to email, like Sarah said, fostering relationships is so important. It's what they want. They don't need anything fancy. They just want it simple. They want to be communicated to, and they want to know that you guys are listening to them and giving them what they want, And I think what you guys both said has been so great advice to the nonprofits listening in today. And so as piggying back off this last question, email service providers are becoming very sophisticated. And that is why email deliverability should be of top priority for all nonprofits. So Sarah, what are some tactics nonprofits or any that you guys have used at WWF can use to ensure that their emails don't end up in the dreaded spam folder?
Such a good question. I'll also add too that almost even worse than going in spam is not getting delivered at all. You'll know these as bounces, and you'll get hard and soft bounces, which are signals that there's something wrong for you to investigate. So I have sort of 5 points that I often advise people to consider when diving into email deliverability. The first is to get your domain authenticated. Your domain is going to be that sort of email address that you're using to send your emails from. So for us, it's wwfus.org. And we made sure that we have DKIM and SPF set up. And if you don't know what that is, please talk to IT departments or web team, whoever owns your domain name and the DNS for that. You can easily look up, there's plenty of articles about it, so I encourage people to get informed on what that is. That's sort of basic step 1 here, and that tells the mailbox providers, the Gmails, Yahoos, that you are who you say you are, and if you're using a third party to send emails through, that you authorize them to do so. So we're trying to cut down on, people who are spoofing us, right? That's sort of step number 1. Step number 2 is making sure that you're obtaining clean email addresses who want your emails. So this is, basics of list hygiene. And this is really important now because, again, the Gmails, Yahoos are paying attention to if you're sending to, typo email addresses, to dormant email addresses who are no longer checking email anymore. And they're also making sure that people want your email, right? So if you've sneakily signed someone up for your email and they're not opening it, that's going to hurt you too. So get sort of a CAPTCHA, reCAPTCHA on your forms. If you have just email sign-up forms, maybe consider use some sort of email validation tool for your forms to make sure that you're getting only good email addresses and there aren't any sort of bad people trying to run fake email addresses or get fake email addresses through. I know, from example, we have some quizzes on our site, like find your inner animal or what type of tree are you? And we'll have, an email capture on that, and some people will just put in a fake email address just because they want the results. So they put in, fake@fake.com. And until you put some sort of validation or do some kind of check on that, you're just dirtying your email address with bad data, and that doesn't reflect well. 3 is, this is scary for a lot of people, but suppressing non-openers. Take a good look at who is not opening your email. I know some groups who have not even done this at all, and they just send the emails to everybody, and they've never looked at how many people haven't opened an email in 6 months, 12 months, or more. But if you're starting to see a decline in your open rates or deliverability, this is one of the first things to look at is there a large group of your file, 20% more, who are just not opening your emails. It's time to maybe consider not sending emails to them. It increases the likelihood that your best supporters will see your emails in their inbox. The fourth is optimizing your HTML code, and that's just making sure that you have good, clean code, that will render well on different devices and email service providers. And again, they're looking for that to make sure you have sort of sophisticated email code in there. I just learned today that if you're pointing to a website that may have had an inadvertent issue where the website is down, that your emails might not get delivered to inboxes. So they're checking your links too. So just make sure that everything's operational and works. And then lastly is monitoring and making sure that you're taking a look at certain key open rates, number of opens, clicks over time to know when you do have an issue. For example, we noticed a few years ago, again, when Gmail's open rates were decreasing in relation to all the other ones. So we knew exactly where to start fixing, but we wouldn't have known that if we hadn't been tracking it. Or Yahoo typically shows when there's an issue, it'll show higher soft bounces. So if you're tracking soft bounces and you start noticing an increase, check to see if it's Yahoo. It might be Yahoo, and then you'll know that that's an email service provider to concentrate on. And when I say concentrate, I mean maybe you'll want to look at who's not opening in Yahoo and start suppressing them. So, email deliverability is a real holistic look at your practices, and it does take a lot of different things to kind of get your domain reputation in a good state and make sure that you're getting the best likelihood for arriving in inboxes.
Wow, that's so great. That was such a concise and clear way of outlining your 5 points. And I think that our audience will definitely be taking notes during this episode. I love it. Bradley, do you have anything to add to what Sarah just said?
She really did a phenomenal job covering most all of it. I want to echo one thing, though, and say how important I think it is. I do think it is really scary to delete people from your list. But, what Sarah was kind of talking about is all these things added together create your domain reputation. And your reputation is not just dictated on one email you send, but it's dictated on how emails you send, over a long period of time. And it's the emails that are sent from tools like MailChimp and stuff like that, but also your personal emails that you're sending to people. And so your whole domain, is really getting kind of graded by Google and Yahoo and AOL and all these tools. And so I think, to Sarah's point, kind of managing this stuff over time and paying attention to all of it's really important. But one of the best things you can do is if you have a group of people who aren't opening, you can kind of naturally increase your reputation if you remove those people, because now your open rates, your engagement rates, your click-through rates, all those things are going to go up if you just remove you make the denominator smaller. And so I think it is really important to think about how am I going to move people off. One of the practices we actually do here at Kindful is we do this every 6 months. Is we remove folks who haven't opened in 6 months, but we send them an email, one last kind of ditch email just to those people, and we say, hey, we noticed you haven't engaged with our emails in quite some time. Let us know if you'd like to stay on the list. And you'd be surprised how many people then finally engage. We call it our breakup email. And they finally engage and say, no, I still want to get it. And so, we keep about 10% of the people we're going to remove, but then the other ones we just remove because we know it's more important to have a higher likelihood we're going to get in the inbox for people who want to see our emails than it is keeping old emails in our database that may not ever open.
I still agree with that. I'll just say that I often get people coming up into me and asking, they'll have management and they're trying to make the sell to suppress non-openers, and they're having a really hard time making that explanation, sharing the facts that we know, which is that if you start suppressing people who are not opening, you're increasing the likelihood of those very engaged supporters that they're going to see your email. And it's, again, one of the biggest struggles that I see with organizations trying to tackle email deliverability. And sometimes it's a little bit of a game of trust, right? You got to understand that that's, how it works, and you have to start then testing it and seeing if you can get those numbers to start increasing. And you have to start looking at, obviously your open rates are going to increase, right? Because you're removing a lot of sort of the dead weight there. But it's hard for some people to grasp, and hopefully they'll start seeing, but your number of opens actually does increase when you do that. So I always tell people to hang in there and try to really monitor over time, and the results will eventually pan out.
And if it's okay, I'd like to add one last thing, and that is, don't ignore MailChimp and Emma and Constant Contact and all those tools' warnings, right? So a lot of these tools have some pretty good algorithms already built in. So you're going to spend a ton of time in the designer, designing your email, getting it ready, and then you're going to go over to like a review tab typically, or like a preview tab, and they're going to have some little warnings that pop up that tell you, hey, you're likely to drop in the spam folder. And after you've put so much work in, it's sometimes tempting or easy to say, that's probably not that big of a deal. Like, listen to those things, because they are really trying to help you, and they are important. And so I think a lot of those tools have those kind of warnings built in, and that's a great place to start. I know like the DKIM and the DNS and all this stuff can be scary, and it sounds like a lot to do, but just starting with paying attention with the warnings that you're getting in the tool you're using is a really good place to start.
Yeah, that's great. Bradley, so we've talked a little bit about it already, but do you have any other tips on testing email deliverability that we haven't discussed?
I think like broadly, I would say I'm going to go outside of just specifically deliverability here a little bit, but I think like the best leading indicator, and Sarah's kind of alluded to this a little bit, the best leading indicator to deliverability is your open rate. And so, you want to see that people are opening the emails, right? And so what I would be testing for is trying new things. We both mentioned, instead of sending from the organization name, send from just the executive director's name, or a fundraiser's name, or an individual's name, and see if you get more people to open that email than what you typically get when you send from the organization name. And then, so broadly, I would just say, once you get your open rate open, then you want to start really looking at your engagement rate. And so, are you getting people to click? Are you giving them an option to click back to your website or to another document or something? These are the same things that Google, Yahoo, AOL, and all those tools are going to look at to see, are people finding your emails relevant? Obviously, you want to also watch things like opt-out rate and stuff like that. But I think if you can watch one metric, just try to get more people to open your email, and just try different things to do that.
I think Bradley said what I was going to say, which is email deliverability is hard, if not impossible, to A/B test. There's so much that goes into the back-end decision of where your email is going to get delivered by the mailbox provider, that you can't isolate it. You can't isolate these variables. You can't isolate domain reputation or list hygiene or all of that, because it takes all of your historical emails into consideration. So the best way to really improve your deliverability through testing is testing to increase your opens and click rates. Mm-hmm. So So I'm just going to reemphasize that is if you're trying to do any incremental increases, that's the place to start.
And are there any things that nonprofits should be avoiding when they're putting together their email?
Do not buy a list. You know,
Hallelujah.
earn earn people's, earn the list. Like give people an incentive to opt into your list, and then, as I said before, continue to provide value to them. One of the quickest ways to get people to stop engaging with your email is to only make the email valuable to you instead of providing content that is valuable to them. And so, I think I follow many organizations, and one of the pits, like I said, I feel like I see constantly is that every email is an ask. And some of the things I love the most is, when we give to a lot of organizations at Kindful, and so we end up on a lot of lists. And one of the things I love to see is how is the funds that I've given or the donations I've given this year being put to work. Show me how the work is acting out. Tell me the stories. And, because those are the things that I'm going to really engage with. And those likely are going to be the reasons I'm going to continue to open the email. And I'm going to be more willing to tolerate an ask, and probably more likely to give if you've cultivated the relationship with me more, instead of just making every email simply about, an ask. I think that's one of the biggest things I avoid. And then, like I said, earn the list. And the easiest way to do that is make sure on your website you have a way for people to sign up, and that the form actually works. You would be amazed at how many websites people have out there that they either don't have a way to sign up for a list, or to subscribe to an email list, or the actual form to subscribe is broken. And so, those are some things I think when you think about trying to build your list and build a quality list, is make sure you earn it, and that you're sending really relevant content, and you're staying in touch with those people. Because if you go a really long time without sending an email and you only send one email a quarter, people are going to kind of forget about you. And so, relevance and timeliness and, earning the list, I think, are all very important.
Yeah, I love what you said about the impact point. Because, one of the biggest things we talk about here at NonProfit Pro is what the donors want. What donors want is they want to see where their dollars are going and who they're impacting and how nonprofits are using it. And I also subscribe to a lot of nonprofits, and one of my favorite things is when a nonprofit shares a story of a certain person that's being impacted by the donation, whether it's they're getting food or they're getting water or they're getting shelter, or an animal getting a home. It makes me feel good about myself that my money went toward that. And Sarah, do you have anything to add to that?
As somebody in sort of the stewardship, concentration, and retention, I very much appreciate, yes, the varied asks, right? Some people have different ways that they want to support you other than just financial, for example, but they're also signing up for your emails not only to find out how to help, but to find out how they are helping. So to make it clear that you're achieving results with their help, and they can be doing anything from sharing your mission on social media or talking about it or signing a petition. There's lots of different ways, again, to support a nonprofit. So honoring that and thanking people just for, having your attention or giving you the time of day is really important in reinforcing the value that you're providing through email. I'll also add in some personal pet peeves I have about email when I see it in my inbox. We talked about the HTML plain text ratio, and I'm often seeing all HTML emails, which drives me a little crazy because I know from accessibility standpoint that that's not good. If somebody has trouble discerning images, they have to rely entirely on the alt text of that email to understand what it's about. And sometimes those emails look very lovely, but I think we'll maybe soon start seeing a shift where email service providers are, maybe penalizing emails that are too HTML heavy. And it doesn't feel personal either, right? As Bradley mentioned earlier. So that's one of my things to avoid. The other one is people who don't pay attention to the preview text. As I mentioned, it's one of the top 3 things they see in the inbox. And I often see people still with this, either there's like an image source link in there, or you'll see a email not displaying correctly. And that's such good real estate to advertise what's in your email to get someone to open it. So I encourage people to look at that if you're not already. And then sort of the last one, of course, is just going to be, emailing your entire list all of the time. So people who don't target emails, you really should look at, does everybody need to see this email, or is there a certain segment that you think will react better while giving other people maybe a break if you have a large volume of emails going out? So it's time for us to be a little more strategic about who we're sending the emails to and at what time.
Yeah, that's great. That's such great advice, and it's usually the latter, I think. So to close this out, I usually ask all of our guests who come on the Nonprofit Voice this one question, and Sarah, I'll let you start, and then Bradley, you can follow her. If there's one piece of advice that you haven't given today that you could to nonprofits, what would it be?
Start tracking email performance over time. I think that that's a great way to not only understand where you are currently, but to see where you've come from, where you're going, so that you're first to spot when there's an issue. You don't want to spot an issue in the middle of December if you're really relying on year-end fundraising, right? You want to be able to catch things before they happen or immediately after. So really knowing what your benchmark is a great place to start. Tracking typical number of hard bounces and soft bounces on emails, as well as looking at your opens, maybe picking a few domains where you have the most subscribers. We use Gmail and Yahoo. So I'm looking at not only our overall opens and open rate, but our opens and open rate for those two. So I can easily see the relationship of if we're sending to more targeted groups with each of those, is that increasing the number of opens, really looking at sort of that bottom line there. So really starting, again, to start understanding what your profile looks like, because everyone's is going to be a little bit different. If you're a smaller nonprofit, I know some smaller nonprofits maybe have more engaged supporters and a smaller list, and they're not even seeing very many issues, and they may not need to do too many suppressions. But if you're a larger one, maybe that this is something to look into and something to take a step back and really see what are your trends, where do you need to focus on improving? If it's hard and soft bounces, you need to look at your acquisition. If it's your open rates for Gmail or Yahoo, you need to look at suppressing some non-engaged supporters. So that's a great place to start.
And Bradley?
Yeah, I would. I think one of my big things would be, if I had one piece of advice, would be to focus on relevance. And what I mean by that, I think Sarah just hit on it, and I'm kind of surprised we've made it through this whole discussion without bringing it up more often, but is segmenting your list and thinking about, and you don't have to overdo it. You don't have to come up with 20 different segments. Some really large organizations may do that, but let's say you have 2 or 3 campaigns. I recently got an email the other day from a organization that thanked me for coming to their event, but I didn't go to their event. I think what may have happened is they sent the email to their whole list instead of just sending it to the people who came to the event. And so I think really thinking about how you send content that you would want to open in your inbox, and thinking about the relevance of the content. So if you're sending volunteer opportunities and you have a big volunteer list, maybe just focus that on your volunteers, and every now and then ask non-volunteers to become volunteers. Or if you have different campaigns or causes that you do within your organization, pay attention to where people are giving and send them content about that specific campaign or that specific cause versus, sending everyone everything. So I think relevance is incredibly important, and will help you increase your open rates, keep people from opting out, and overall improve your deliverability.
I love it. Really great advice from the both of you. So that about wraps it up for today's episode. I want to thank our listeners for listening in on today's podcast. And Sarah and Bradley, I had so much fun. It's been an absolute pleasure having you guys on. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So on behalf of NonProfit Pro, we will see you on the next episode of the NonProfit Voice. Have a great day.